Hi, I'm Jack Barazzini, and you're listening to The Secret to Stargate, where we talk about the hidden meanings and deeper layers found in the Stargate movies, TV series, and more. And joining me today are Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father.
Howdy, Jack.
And Lisa Jones. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Jack.
And Victor Lambs. Hey, Victor.
Hi, Jack.
Today we're discussing the 22nd episode of Season 5, Revelations. But before we do that, I wanted to talk about this article that came out on Yahoo recently. It was an interview with Dean Devlin, the producer. He's done things like Godzilla and Independence Day.
And The Librarians.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he did that one?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
That's a good movie. He did the original Stargate with Roland Emmerich, and they were talking about some of their plans for the sequels, and it's very different from what was going to be in the TV show. And if you've seen any Roland Emmerich movie, you know his kind of style. It's fun, but it's not really what I'd want from Stargate. But the most interesting thing I thought was talking about the original movie, where when you see Ra, he's the Egyptian guy, but then later on in the movie you see him and he's this weird kind of your stereotypical gray alien. And apparently that was a post-production decision because the actor who played Ra, his name is, let me grab that.
Jay Davidson.
Yeah, and, Jay Davidson. He was going through some issues with substance addiction, and as someone in recovery, I totally understand that, and I hope that he's doing well. But the reason they ended up, yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. The reason that his performance was so weird was because of that, and that's why they ended up dubbing over his voice and making him into an alien. And apparently that tested much better with test audiences than the original idea that he was just ancient Egyptian. But apparently Dean Devlin told him about this when the movie came out, and he was very apologetic and he felt like he ruined the movie, and he had to tell him, no, this is actually good because it works way better for the story. Yeah. So it's interesting to see where that original idea for the Goa'uld came from, and it was kind of an editing decision that happened because of problems with the filming.
Well, it was clearly something they could do very easily and quickly to solve the problem of how to make this ending look good. And it does answer the questions of, well, how could this Egyptian boy live for, 5,000 years or 6,000 years or whatever it was and still, be in charge of this massive army and everything? Well, because he was actually an alien that had taken over this 5,000, 6,000 year old boy.
Yeah. And I think even casting Jay Davidson to begin with was a bit of a stunt casting because he had been in acted in one role, and that was in The Crying Game, which was one of those cultural, haven't seen it, but it was everywhere in 92. And so they paid him, I think, $1 million or something to be in Stargate. And even the reviews at the time were what he appeared to be way miscast and stuff, but I can't imagine the movie without kind of the alien effects to it. It would have been much stranger, I think.
Yeah. Looking at just some of the ideas they had for the sequel, it was going to take place. They were going to go to another planet, and it was just going to be Mayan pyramids, and they were going to
which we got, or not? Yeah, which we got. And then the third was going to be every 1960s Doctor Who episode mashed together. with the Yetis and the Loch Ness Monster.
Daleks exterminate.
Yeah.
It was going to be every sort of conspiracy theory and cryptid and anything like that just rolled into one. And he wanted to bring back James Spader and Kurt Russell. And I think it's safe to say at this point that none of that's going to happen, which I'm okay with.
There's still rumors that he would like to go back and revisit the movies franchise. And, and Roland Emmerich as well would like to go back and revisit. And it's just I hope that ship has sailed. I hope, the rumors from Amazon are starting to sound positive that, they are looking at continuing the SG-1, style, SG-1 era storyline, just, maybe in more recent years. But I hope they don't plan on going back and revisiting the movies. I really don't.
I know there's talk at Amazon, or there's rumors about it, that they're going to do a Stargate movie before they do anything with the TV series. And I guess that would be okay. I just I kind of feel like Stargate works better as a TV series. It will depend on what kind of movie they're doing. Is it going to be something where it's a soft reboot where they essentially reintroduce everything for a new audience?
Mhm.
Or is it going to be something that brings in old characters and is a continuation? Because I feel like the latter would be much more interesting.
Well, we haven't gotten yet to the SG-1 movies. There are there are a couple SG-1 movies, and they're actually pretty decent. They're pretty good movies. So it can be done.
Mhm.
And I get a feeling it is going to be kind of a soft reboot continuation. I hope so. Off of off of SG-1 Atlantis. Hopefully, I mean, I think that's what a lot of fans want. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I hope that they're listening to that, and I hope they're seeing what's gone on with Star Trek, where it took couple tries, Discovery, for whatever it's worth, for them, the people who are in charge of Star Trek now, to realize that the main people you're going to be pulling in are the people who already want to watch this. Like people who don't already like Star Trek or Stargate are probably not going to jump into it.
Yeah. Or if they're interested, they might go back and watch some of the original.
Right.
Because I am meeting people who are watching Stargate for the first time now. But if this show doesn't kind of continue the same way from the original, I just think you're missing a boat, because then you're not going to get the people to go watch the original stuff.
And I hate to say it, but Stargate doesn't have quite the background that Star Trek does, where they could throw out Discovery and make a mess of it and still have the momentum to then bring out things like Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks and Cards Season 3, which were much more successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when they try that, you get Stargate Origins, which I watched recently, and that was it was something. That's the most charitable way I can put it.
There was a Stargate, and Trip was there for some reason.
Yeah.
I will say that at that point when it came out, it had been a lot of years since Stargate. And so we were a little
2018 or whenever it was.
Hungry and desperate. So so we were a little more forgiving than we might have been.
I'm just glad that's not that wasn't my introduction to Stargate, because I probably wouldn't have watched anything else.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anyways, on to actually good Stargate. Today we were discussing the 22nd episode of season 5, Revelations.
It was only 20 seconds.
Yeah, it's
a lot longer.
This is going to be 20 seconds.
That's why I put the article talking about the article in front.
Sorry,
because it's going to be a short
22nd
episode.
20 seconds.
All right.
We need to have the little drum riff button.
Yes. I need to get a Stream Deck and just put that on there.
Yeah.
I did actually not. I have a 20 th instead of second, because I forgot to edit that from my old document. So I'm glad I didn't say it was the 22nd.
22th, yeah.
Yes.
The 12th.
12th. After Osiris attacks Adara 2, an Asgard research planet, and seemingly kills Thor, SG-1 is sent to Adara 2 to rescue Heimdall, who is working on a way to help the Asgard reproduce. They discover that Thor is alive but is imprisoned by the Goa'uld, and they develop a plan to rescue him. However, the plan goes awry and Jack and Teal'c are captured. Sam is tortured by Osiris, but she refuses to give up any information. Jack and Teal'c escape and are rescued by a fleet of Asgard ships, and the Asgard are able to defeat the Goa'uld and to rescue Thor. Thor is placed in stasis, but he is expected to make a full recovery. SG-1 returns to Earth, where they are debriefed by General Hammond. They are all relieved to be alive, but they are saddened by the loss of Daniel Jackson. This episode ends with Jack, Sam, and Teal'c walking out of Stargate Command, and as they leave, they feel a strange breeze. And Jack smiles, knowing that Daniel is still with them in spirit. I really liked that ending. It was a nice touch. What are your thoughts on this episode, Father?
Well, this is a good one. You know, we get to see more about the Asgard. We learn a lot about the Asgard in this one. You know, why they look the way they do and everything, and why there's concern for the continuation of their species, which eventually plays out in not so good a way. But this is a good one, and of course we get to see Anubis for the first time.
Yep.
Of course we have Osiris shows back up, and and is as devious as ever. And yeah, I like this one. I've always liked this one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Lisa?
I also really like this one. I like how they, we criticize Stargate for not like having all this emotional stuff happening and then they ignore it in the next episode. And so I like that they do address that Daniel's gone and there's, a little bit of, you see each of the main characters, even Hammond, kind of talk about, well, I mean, Jack doesn't talk, but you see them dealing with it in their own way. And so I appreciated that. And then ending the season with like you said, making reference to Daniel. So it was nice to not just have a whole episode about, oh my gosh, he's gone. And what does that mean? So we had all this other stuff going on, but yet they still included him. So that was really nice.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, after the cold open we get where Osiris comes in and chews all the scenery and defeats Thor. I like that we get that scene with Hammond and Sam where they're talking about where do we go from here and how we're even supposed to feel about this because he's not really dead, but he's not here anymore. So what does that mean? So it was nice that we opened with that. What about you, Victor?
Yeah, I like the Stargate episode. It's kind of, if not peak Stargate, it's kind of the platonic ideal of a Stargate episode. You have space battles, you have Gould. You have the revelation that, the Asgard, the unstoppable force in the galaxy, suddenly can't stand up to the Gould anymore because Anubis has come back from wherever he's been with this weird, pearlescent, glowy face or mask anyways. And so they're setting up the next, threat for the next season. It's a credible threat. We learn, like you said, a lot about the Asgard, which is always cool. To learn more about them, we get a good mix of Asgard puppetry and CGI Asgard. Sometimes, both in the same shot. And then, the team does address kind of, this being their first mission without Daniel. But I do have one major criticism of the episode, and that is for all their talk about missing Daniel. They really don't miss Daniel once they get into the thick of the action. Like, there's at no point do they ever come into a problem that they would need Daniel to solve.
Not just that. Teal'c actually gets like lines and things to do.
And we get and it's a Malatsi and Mully episode. We get a lot of really good humor. There's quite a few bits with the Asgard holograms on the Gould ship that are very humorous. We'll talk about those, but so that it's funny, it's action packed. There's space battles. There's ship corridor battles. There's world building, and so I like it a lot.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a while since we've gotten a Asgard heavy episode. So it was nice to get that. It was nice to flesh out the species. I think my favorite line of the whole episode was Jack's 1,000 years.
Yeah. Just couldn't believe it. Well, of course, we get introduced to Heimdall, Terrell Rothery, voicing that one.
Oh, yeah.
So she doesn't show up on screen, but you can kind of, if you saw at the beginning where it was, it listed that she was the voice there, that you could, I could hear that it's her. I could hear it's her.
Yeah.
That was good casting there.
Because Daniel Jackson is Thor. I mean, Michael Shanks is the voice of Thor. And this was his last Thor episode, I believe.
For a while.
Yeah.
But
do they get a different voice actor for Thor, or do they just not have him until
they have a different Asgard?
Yeah. Yeah. I think Thor just was missing.
Well, in Heimdall, we see that they're not all the same personality.
Yeah.
Because we met, Thor and Freya, and both of them are pretty stoic and, they're pretty calm. They don't really get too excited. You get Heimdall. Oh, it's so great to see you. I've heard so much about SG-1,
Running down the stairs or ramp or whatever it was. A bit unconvincingly, but the CGI is still very good once she actually makes it down to the bottom of the stairs. And
yeah. But kind of more the excited scientist.
Yes, it was very refreshing to see that, and just how bubbly he was.
Yeah,
like I was not expecting that from an Asgard, so that was fun. I also like I like how Jack just refers to Thor as little buddy all the time. It's very endearing. So the way they start is they have the Asgard contact SG-1 and say that Thor is dead and we need you to rescue Heimdall. And then when they get there, Heimdall says Thor's not dead, he's just captured and we can see where he is on the ship. But I don't feel like they ever really gave an explanation as to why they said he was dead. Was that to get past the Asgard? Maybe I missed it, but it just seemed odd.
I think they just assumed that his ship had been destroyed.
Okay.
And they hadn't been in contact with Heimdall.
Okay, that makes sense because it seemed odd.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I took it too, is they didn't know that he had escaped from the ship.
Right.
So they thought he went down with his ship.
Yeah. And the big issue here is that now the Goa'uld have this very powerful weapon that the Asgard cannot stand up against, and that kind of blows the whole treaty out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to see that. I feel like and this kind of just comes from the way the Asgard have interacted with humanity, like the way with the different people on the planets, they portray themselves as gods, like literally they masquerade as gods. Kind of like that, kind of like the Goa'uld.
But benevolent gods, not malevolent gods.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you see, as you actually encounter them, you see that they're advanced, but they're not maybe as all powerful as they make themselves out to be. And I feel like that's something that we've been seeing more and more the more they've come into the show. Because initially we get them like the first time they come, they're like in their big ship and they're super imposing.
And they vacuum up all the Jaffa.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And then now we're to the point where they're getting their little gray butts kicked. And
you know, Osiris even kind of pokes at Thor like that, but like, I'm a god and you won't kill me, as you know what,
Yeah, you can't kill a god. Yeah.
You can't kill a god, as you know, wink, wink.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of nice. I mean, where we've been at the end of season 5, the Goa'uld haven't been terribly a big threat for a while because of the Protected Planets Treaty. And so it's kind of nice that you're going into a new season on a new channel, and you know that there's going to be a fight with the Goa'uld. I mean, they're back.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, not to mention SG-1's killing every Goa'uld they find, but then now they've kind of hit the point now where they're not. And now they've got a Goa'uld that is going to be a serious threat.
Right.
Yeah, because they've killed so many Goa'uld now that it makes them kind of not that formidable. So it's nice to see that kind of flipped around, because we've gotten to the point where the Goa'uld have appeared pretty weak, that they keep getting defeated by these 3 humans.
Yeah.
Well, and we've talked about it before, that when they that I would say crutch or device that something always works or always gets, saves the day. And so to have the Asgard always be able to save the day, or the Protected Planets Treaty, and now that's gone. So it just opens the door to some really cool stories and fights and threats and all of that coming up.
Yeah. And the Asgard aren't all powerful, and they are locked into their fight with the replicators. But now that the Goa'uld are like more technically advanced than the Asgard, shouldn't like they just point the replicators towards the Goa'uld and just say like, go get those guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and of course at the end, the Asgard still do come to save the day, because they got all of a sudden now they got the more powerful ships again.
Were those O'Neill class? I couldn't tell. I think those were like,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't recognize the difference between the ships. But.
Yeah, and they couldn't spare a ship, and that's why they needed Earth's dinky little busted up, cargo ship, Jaffa cargo ship
with no seat in the back.
Yeah, with no seat.
Yeah,
that was funny.
Was
Yeah.
It's one of those things where the spaceships have to travel at the speed of plot. So
yeah, pretty much.
That's why they couldn't get there in time until the end. And we get to learn a lot more about the history of the Asgard, because it's revealed that Heimdall has been working on genetic research, because all the Asgard are clones. And that's they're kind of getting into a Habsburg situation where they're just getting more and more genetically stagnant. And we get to see an ancient pre-augmented, pre-cloned Asgard, and
30,000 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
In a stasis pod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like handsome Squidward from the SpongeBob episode.
I was thinking it was like if Beldar Conehead had a baby with like another Conehead, and it was a Conehead baby and grew up to become a Conehead. That's what it would look like because it looked like a cone head from
Yeah,
the
kind of half human face, but then with the big Asgard head, and
yeah, it was fun to see. I was hoping you'd wake up and do something, but
just
just like chilling.
Kill me.
Yeah.
No, I don't think we ever see that again. No, and
I
then
don't think so.
No, but you were right. They did name check Reese in this episode, or at least the android.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And then at the end, they're like, "Hey, that information you gave us that panned out. Now we can spare some ships." It's like, okay, how did it like pan out? They don't really.
And we'll find out some of that
Still to come.
later. But
Yeah.
basically, it. I hate to say it, but that ending kind of did feel like we better get this episode finished. We've been writing for a while, and stuff's going on.
Yeah.
And how do we end this? Oh, I know. The Asgard show up with 3 ships this time, and that's enough.
Deus Ex Asgard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder. I looked this up, but I couldn't find anything about it. I wonder if this was intended to be a 2-parter and it got cut short, maybe because they were transitioning to a new channel. There was some reason why they didn't want to do a 2-parter across networks. Because
I just read that they wanted to wrap it up, and for the first time they don't do a cliffhanger at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Because they were changing networks, so they wanted to end it just intact without the cliffhanger.
Right. But still have the opening for the next season, because it does start with a 2-parter for the next season.
Mm-hmm. It was a good episode. It was a good mix of action. Got a lot of good humor. The whole discussion between I like that like 3-way discussion they have with Sam and Jack and Heimdall about the issues of Asgard reproduction and the fact that they cannot sexually reproduce anymore, and how Sam is basically doing the thing where she translates everything for Jack, and then his reactions to it are good.
Yeah.
And how put out Heimdall is about it. It's like, we don't talk about that with outsiders.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
Like the Klingon
nice,
forehead
right?
ridge debate. Yeah.
Yeah.
But and then like I mentioned, because the Asgard have hologram technology as well as beaming technology, Sam helps out. Jack and Teal'c have to go over to the ship to knock out the shield generator. So this is like a very Empire Strikes Back meets Return of the Jedi type escapade for them. But yeah, so they have to go over and they get captured, or before they get captured, they're trying to distract the Jaffa. So she projects a hologram of herself onto the ship, and just when she says like, "Hey guys, what's happening?" and they'll turn around and look. Yeah, it was very funny.
That
Samantha
was fun.
Carter being just kind of comedic there.
Yeah,
and they shoot at the hologram.
Yep. Getting got to get those henchmen out of the way.
Yep.
It is, like you had mentioned, Lisa. It is funny that you don't really miss Daniel Jackson once the actual plot gets going, because there's been that consistent problem, I feel like, where you've got one too many people, and one of the actors, usually either Daniel or Teal'c, kind of don't get anything to do.
Yeah. And so by Daniel not being there, it really opened the door for Teal'c's character to have a little bit more input and action. Yeah, but I did like the way they had Osiris ask where he was.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of a nice nod, and then
and the look on her face when she realized that he really was dead.
Yeah.
Just that can't be. How could this? How could he be dead? It wasn't the look of a Gwalul that was happy that her enemy was conquered. It was the look of that was Sarah coming through, and what's going
almost concern or disbelief, or how can that be? Yeah.
I will say that Sam's part in this, in the first half or so of the episode was actually pretty good, to get that kind of that trying to get Teal'c and Jack to recognize this. Of course, for Jack, it's like, this is another person I've served with who's died. I have to suppress that and do the mission. And Teal'c's trying to say, no, this is a good thing. What he went through, as painful as it is a good thing. But Sam can't see that, and even General Hammond, where he's talking about his comrade, his person he served with, who died in Vietnam, but didn't know what happened to him. Didn't know if he was a POW. if he was, missing in action, what his status was, and how to handle that, where you just got to move on. You just got to keep the next mission, the next step.
I like the way they had each of them handle it differently, because I felt that as we all know, I mean, different people handle grief differently. And so I kind of liked it, because I felt like there was some part of each of the main characters that people could identify with and how they would handle it. And so I liked the nod to, Carter, got to be a little more of the emotional, I'm having trouble with this, and how she approached each of them and how they dealt with it. And I did like Teal'c in that he talked about it being a great honor and everybody wants this, but he did end with saying, but I wish he was here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was, I really liked that moment.
Yeah. I liked his line. It is a great accomplishment,
like
what he was able to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like Teal'c is the most, or not the most, but I feel like he's more emotionally in tune with himself than Jack is, which is funny because he's so stoic, but he's almost got that kind of Spock thing going on where because he's so stoic, you almost assume he doesn't really have emotions, but he just keeps them locked down real tight, where
he's more aware of them though.
Right. But Jack, on the other hand, just tries to smush them down and ignore them. And
well, that's,
you can see,
and we see that where they're sitting in the ship, in the cargo ship, and Jack's literally field stripping his P90
over and over. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was cool. It was cool to see. I'd never seen one of those broken apart. So it was cool to see how it goes together, but he's doing it because he's distracting himself.
Yeah.
He's distracting himself with something he knows, which is maintaining your equipment.
Yeah. Plus, we know that those cargo ships aren't exactly fast, so they may have been in it for 10 or 12 days at that point.
Yeah, close quarters.
Yeah.
I do like. I feel like the effects with the Asgard were pretty good here. Like they were CGI and puppets, but the transition wasn't awkward or jarring. And when it's CGI, you can still tell it's CGI, but it isn't like distractingly bad. Like it looks about as good as the puppets. So it was nice to see them walk on their weird little legs too.
Yeah. And Heimdall's like just facial expressions were really good for the time and for the budget. I mean, it's, good eye lines for the actors looking at,
Oh, I read something about that.
Yeah.
Did you read that
with us? Yeah.
Yeah.
That they actually had Tara Rothery be the actor in the scene, and she dressed in all black with a black hood, and they had to put Heimdall's face on her so the actors could look. But the face, because of the height of Heimdall versus her, Heimdall's face was on her chest. So they said, watching the scenes, watching the actors have to talk to her chest was like...
That's amazing.
They said she was a very good sport.
Yeah.
That's one of my eyes are down here.
Yeah. That was funny.
Nice. Yeah, that definitely makes it easier to interact with a CG character when you have the actual actor there on set.
And we learned that you has had a falling out after Osiris stabbed him, or I guess, and now he's at war with Anubis.
Yeah, the Gould are at each other's throats. I guess now that they're done feasting on all the other Gould.
Little baby Gould.
I need to unsee that, but
yeah. I love I love that line where Osiris is like, "Why won't that old fool just die?"
Yeah.
I like you. He's got a charisma that the other Gould don't seem to have. But yeah, and so we get Anubis and his very awesome ring wraith like costume.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like it. They're keeping him mysterious. He's not just another dude in Egyptian cosplay.
No, we'll learn more about him next season. And he's definitely not like the other Gould.
Yeah.
He's been missing in action for a reason.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which makes him a little more dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Yeah. That'll be fun to see. Yeah, this was a good way to end the season. I'm really looking forward to next season. I actually like that this wasn't a two-parter. because I think I'm just burnt out on cliffhangers on anything in general because of a lot of modern TV. But it was nice to have this story that wrapped it up. It was a good capstone to the previous episode where they got to grieve with Daniel, and so it was good. It was fun. Had a lot of humor, a lot of action. Pretty much everything you want from Stargate.
Yep.
And I'm really glad they didn't end this season with Daniel dying.
Yeah.
You know, that it was the episode before. So like you said, they could go back and wrap it up and give you something to look forward to rather than just leave you upset. you know, we're like, what now?
The last scene is him ascending, and that's it. The end of the season.
But come watch us on a new channel on a new day at any time.
Yeah, exactly.
I did read that they didn't know they were getting a 6th season until halfway through season 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So when you go back and you kind of look at season 5 and the episodes, it is interesting to think that I wonder how they had to change the second half of season 5 because they knew it was like, oh wait, we still have more story to tell.
Yeah.
You know?
The worst, I've mentioned this before, is like Supernatural, where they would not know they're getting reviewed until basically they had finished filming the last episode. So then they'd have to like film a little cliffhanger and just like 20 seconds and like tack it on to like the last episode of the season.
Well, and as we go into season 6, the article also said that they really only expected 1 season on Sci-Fi. They were going to do season 6 and then they were going to do a major motion picture.
Okay.
Which we know didn't happen. They stayed on Sci-Fi
6 seasons
for
in a movie.
Yeah, they were going to do 6 seasons and then the movie.
7 seasons in a movie.
So they instead did 5 more seasons on Sci-Fi.
Yeah. We can, I guess there's debate as to whether or not they should have, but I don't know. I'm glad we still got a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. More Stargate is better than less Stargate.
That's true. I still watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched it just to have something to do until Atlantis came on.
Yeah.
That's true. Or to see what crazy thing Vala was going to do next.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
What's that crazy Vala going to do tonight? Are they going to talk to Merlin today, or what are they doing?
Merlin comes into this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It gets interesting.
I like
Spoilers.
that was definitely
Spoilers.
a vote of confidence there, Victor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he does.
Nice. Wow.
You know how you always say that talking about bad episodes is so much more fun?
So we're gonna have a good time in season 9. Is what you're saying?
And suddenly Devlin's idea of like the Loch Ness monster, the Yetis and stuff doesn't seem that
Well, in a couple of years we'll be into that. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Did y'all have any other thoughts on this episode?
You know what? One thing that kind of struck me is so funny is I don't know why I hadn't noticed this before, but have you noticed they've built these monster ships and have absolutely nobody in them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why I never thought of that until now. It's just, I watch this like, they're walking all over this ship.
Yeah.
And there's like 10 people on the entire ship.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was implied there were more Jaffa, because when they were like going to gas the corridors, it was like, oh, but just think of all the Jaffa that'll hurt and stuff. And then we only see like 2 of them pass out or something.
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 total that they, I think we see a total like 20.
Just light on extras.
Yeah.
You know what is interesting is watching her, I guess he was her first prime, basically talk back to her that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was really interesting because that is not something we would have seen a couple seasons ago. And you kind of makes you wonder,
they've heard about
was it just for the episode, or is that supposed to show us that the idea of Jaffa being free or not just being their pawns?
We even see the 2 of them kind of looking at each other going, okay.
Jaffa being like, check out the Gould. Like,
yeah, there's their grip on power does not seem to be as absolute as Apophysis was, where they were basically just his completely willing servants who believed he was a god. Where you almost feel like with at least with Osiris, and I don't know about with Anubis or not, they kind of go along with the you're a god thing. That you can keep saying that, but they don't really believe it. I feel like SG-1 probably killing as many Goa'uld as they have has kind of shattered that illusion for probably a lot of the Jaffa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this episode, if you listen to this on our audio version, this episode has one of the clips where Jack's like, all we got to do is bust out of here,
Yes.
wrap up the children, ready to commandeer the ship and fly on home and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in our...
Mm-hmm.
Got that. We had Window of Opportunity had the Daniel one. So
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you can fill out your little bingo card there.
Yeah, there you go.
Intro quote.
Awesome. Anything else?
Any titles?
Oh,
Do we have any fun? Yeah, any fun?
Yeah, we did.
Alternate language ones.
Yeah. So in most languages, it was just Revelations, or in Czech, I'm not going to try and pronounce this, but surprising Revelations. But in German, we got Das Geheimnis der Asgard, which is the secret of the Asgard.
Hey.
Yeah. So it's yeah. They're very literal, but at least not too literal titles.
Still in the spirit of it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of some versions they could have gone with that would have fit that mold, but probably shouldn't say them on the show. So,
At least it was something
torture
like
ball.
At least it was something like the Asgard haven't reproduced in 1,000 years or something like that.
Or the man in the stasis pod.
Daniel is a wind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saturn's paddles. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Before we go, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Stargate, including Laurent Z, Maria N, Patricia R, Ron S, and Ryan W. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Stargate and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And be sure to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or on the SQPN YouTube channel. And to find previous episodes of Secret to Stargate and to send us feedback, please visit sqpn.com/Stargate. And you can email us at stargate@sqpn.com or follow StarQuest on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or on Twitter at SQPN. And you can check out our Discord at sqpn.com/Discord. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next episode of SG-1, the two-part season opener of Season 6, Redemption. Until then, Father Corey, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Stargate.
Thank you, Jack.
And Lisa Jones, thank you as well.
Thanks, Jack.
And Victor Lambs, thank you too.
Thanks, Jack. And next time, I'm the hologram.
You're not?
Once again, I'm Jack Berrezzini. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Stargate on StarQuest.
Anyway, I'm sorry, but that just happens to be how I feel about it. What do you think?